Snowplow came through our street at 6 a.m. the morning my brother-in-law changed the locks on the house I paid for. I was standing on the sidewalk in my scrubs, still smelling like the burn unit where I'd worked a 16-hour shift, holding a key that no longer fit a door I'd signed the mortgage for. 7 years they pretended I didn't exist. 7 years of birthdays with no card, of holidays I spent alone microwaving dinner in a rented studio while they ate off plates I'd bought. And then last Thursday they walked into the rehabilitation clinic I built with my own hands. And my father-in-law set a contract on my reception desk and told me I had until midnight to sign over 40% of my practice, or he'd make a phone call that would end me. He had no idea that phone call was the last free breath he'd ever take in the city. Before I go any further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever been the family scapegoat, the one they decided was the problem so they never had to look at themselves. Hit subscribe, because you're going to want to see how this ended. My name's Tovah. I'm 31, and I own a physical rehabilitation and recovery center in Portland. People come to me after car wrecks, after strokes, after the kind of surgeries that take your body apart and leave you to figure out how to walk again. I know something about putting yourself back together from pieces, because that's exactly what I did with my own life. It was a Thursday, just past 4 in the afternoon, and the clinic was full. The hum of the treadmill in the gate lab, the soft grunt of a patient pushing through her third set, the receptionist laughing at something on the phone. I was in the back working with a man named Walt who'd had a hip replacement, watching him take 6 steps without his walker for the first time in 2 months. He had tears in his eyes. I had tears in mine too, honestly. That's the part nobody tells you about this work. You cry with people more than you'd think. Then my front desk girl, Priya, came back looking like she'd seen a ghost, and she told me there were people in the lobby making a scene. I wiped my hands and walked out, and the floor dropped out from under me. There they were. My father-in-law standing dead center in my waiting room, like he owned the air, in that camel coat he's worn to every funeral and wedding for 20 years. Behind him, my mother-in-law clutching her purse against her chest the way she does when she's about to perform sorrow. And off to the side, my sister-in-law, the golden one, and her husband in a watch that cost more than my first car. The last time I'd stood this close to my father-in-law, I'd been 24, on the porch of the house I co-signed for in February, with the wind cutting straight through me, while he told me through the storm door that I was a leech and I'd never amount to anything without the family carrying me. My crime had been refusing to drain my savings to bail out my sister-in-law's failing boutique. For that, they erased me. And now here he was, in my house, the one I built, without a single one of them. He didn't say hello. Of course he didn't. He just looked me up and down, took in the scrubs and the lanyard and the clinic full of people and said, loud enough for the whole lobby to hear, "Get whoever runs this place out here. We need the conference room." I kept my voice level. "I run this place. You don't have an appointment, and you're disturbing my patients." He laughed, that big, mean laugh he uses to make a room feel small. Then he reached into a leather portfolio and pulled out a stack of papers and slapped them down on my reception counter so hard the pen cup jumped. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he said, leaning in close enough that I could smell coffee and cigarettes. "I know exactly who owns this building. Your landlord and I go back years. We golf together. So here's how this goes. You're going to sign these papers transferring 40% of this business to your sister-in-law, because family takes care of family, and you owe us. And if you don't sign tonight, I make one call and you're out on the street by the end of the month. Everything you built, gone, right back where I left you." Before I could even breathe, my sister-in-law floated up to the counter. She had on a coat that still had the boutique tag's ghost on it, and a handbag she kept turning so the logo faced out. She looked around my lobby, the warm wood, the plants I water myself every morning, the wall of patient photos, and she sighed like it physically pained her. "I expected something nicer," she said. "It smells like a gym in here. And these chairs are so beige. I'm honestly surprised people pay for this." Her husband stepped up behind her and dropped a hand on her shoulder. "All manufactured authority." He gave me this slow, condescending smile. "Look," he said, in the voice of a man who has watched too many founder podcasts, "what we're offering is a partnership. You stick to the stretching and the exercises, and we'll handle the real side. vendor contracts, scaling, the business strategy. You're clearly out of your depth running something this size alone. I said nothing. But my eyes dropped to his wrist. The watch was real. I'll give him that. A watch like that you can spot from across a room. But the cuff of his shirt under it was frayed to threads, and there was an old coffee stain set into the fabric. In my line of work, you learn to read a body for what it's hiding. I'd read about him too, 2 weeks back, in the business section. There'd been a piece about a wellness app startup that had missed its second funding round and was burning through what little it had left. I knew the founder's name. It was him. The watch and the smile were a costume stretched over a man drowning in debt. They weren't here to help me grow anything. They were here because they were bleeding out and they decided my clinic was the transfusion. My mother-in-law slid forward then, and the waterworks started right on cue. "Please, sweetheart," she said, dabbing at a corner of her eye that I could see was bone dry. "Your father's giving you a chance to make this right. We can be a family again. Your sister-in-law's expecting a baby, can you believe it? And they need stability. Don't throw that away over old hurt feelings. A baby." They were trying to take half my life's work and they'd wrapped it in a baby like a bow. My father-in-law racked his knuckles on the papers. "Well, what's it going to be? You sign, or I make the call." Priya already had her hand near the phone, watching me, ready to dial 911 the second I gave the word. Any sane business owner would have had security walk them out the front door. And I could have. But standing there looking at their faces, that greedy, expectant, certain look, like the outcome was already decided. Something cold and clear settled over me. Throwing them out wasn't enough. It would be over too fast. They'd walk away telling themselves a story where they were the victims. No, they needed to sit in it. They needed to feel, just once, what it's like to be utterly powerless in a room you walked into so sure you owned. I took a slow breath and gently pushed Priya's hand away from the phone. "There's no need for that," I said, smooth as anything. "Priya, would you take my family to the consultation suite in the back? Give them the good room. Make them comfortable. We've got a lot to talk about." I watched her lead them down the hall, and I watched their whole posture change. My father-in-law's chest puffed out like he'd just conquered something. My sister-in-law smirked at a patient in the waiting room as she passed, chin in the air, like she already had the deed in her purse. Her husband leaned in and muttered something to her about margins and restructuring. They had no idea. The consultation suite is the nicest room in the building. Soft lighting, a big walnut table. Glass on two sides looking out over the river. It's where I tell families their loved one is going to walk again. Tonight, it was going to be something else entirely. A room with one door and no way out of what was coming. I stopped at the front desk on the way back, logged into our point of sale, and opened a fresh tab under the consultation suite. Then I walked in. My mother-in-law didn't waste a second. The door barely clicked shut before she reached across that beautiful table and tried to grab my hand. I pulled it back and pretended to straighten a napkin. Her face fell into that mask of tragedy she's been wearing my whole adult life. "Oh, honey," she whispered. "You have no idea how much I've missed you. These 7 years have been torture for me. A mother shouldn't be cut off from her children like this." Torture. Interesting word for a woman who never once checked if I was alive. I didn't say it. I just looked at her. She pointed a trembling, manicured finger at the contract. "We don't care about the money, sweetheart. This is just a formality, a way to make sure we stay connected this time. We want to be part of your life again." If I hadn't spent 3 years and a small fortune in therapy unlearning the exact spell she was trying to cast, I might have actually felt something. Instead, I picked up the water pitcher off the side table and went around pouring everyone a glass of plain tap water. My sister-in-law stared into hers like I'd handed her pond scum. "Tap water," she said, pushing it away. "Seriously? We're about to be your business partners and you're serving us this?" My father-in-law slapped the table. "We're not toasting a reunion with tap water. Bring us a real bottle. The best Cabernet you've got, and not some cheap thing. The good stuff." I held the pitcher and smiled like I worked the front of a 5-star house. "An excellent choice," I said. "I'll have someone bring it right out. Please, get comfortable. I'll be right back." I walked out, and as the door shut, I heard her husband laughing, telling my father-in-law how easy it was going to be to clean up the staffing situation once they were in charge. They thought they were running up a tab on my dime. They didn't understand that every drop of that wine and every absurd thing they ordered was building a bill that was going to put them on their knees. I had a clinic to run, so for the next 40 minutes I let them stew. I checked on Walt. I signed off on a discharge plan. I drank half a cold coffee at my desk and let the rage in my chest cool into something useful. Then I went back in. One of my aides, a sweet kid named Owen. No, I won't drag him into this, let's just say one of my staff was getting chewed out by my sister-in-law when I walked in. She'd ordered a charcuterie spread, of all things, in a rehab clinic, and was demanding it be free of seed oils, and that the cheese be imported, not domestic. My staffer looked at me like he was drowning. I waved him out and picked up the order pad myself. The charcuterie will run $150, I said flatly. Off menu. She rolled her eyes. Put it on the house tab. My mother-in-law chimed in with a request for a specific cut of steak from a restaurant down the block, cooked exactly so to be sent back if there was a hint of pink. Her husband demanded a seafood tower and snapped his fingers at me like I was a dog. I wrote it all down without blinking. The number in my head was climbing past $1,000, and the wine hadn't even arrived. My father-in-law had had enough of the food. He slammed the contract again. Enough. I didn't come here to watch you play waitress. Sign it, now. He sat back, hands behind his head, smug. You should be grateful I'm even offering. My firm just closed our best year ever. We're swimming in capital. Having my name on this little operation will legitimize you. You need me, sweetheart. I looked at him. The vein in his neck was jumping. There was sweat at his hairline in a room I keep at 68 degrees. His fingers drummed the table in a fast, broken rhythm. A man swimming in capital does not ambush his estranged daughter-in-law on a Thursday demanding a signature by midnight. He was desperate, and the bluster was a curtain over it. The wine came. He swirled it, didn't smell it, threw it back like a shot and told the server to pour for everyone. Then he leaned at me, eyes narrow. Sign before the food comes, Tovah. Her husband couldn't help himself. It's all about strategic partnership, he said, flashing teeth. My company's about to go global next year. We just need to free up some liquid assets to get over a temporary cash crunch this quarter. Once we merge, we optimize your revenue and cover our short-term costs until the next round clears. My sister-in-law's head whipped around. Stop talking. Her elegant little mask cracked clean down the middle. You don't talk about the business at dinner. He blinked. He'd said the quiet part out loud. Temporary cash crunch. That's startup for broke. The room went dead silent, and in that silence the whole thing finally clicked into place for all of them at once. I planted both hands on the table and leaned in. Before we discuss any partnerships, I said, I have one question. Where were you for 7 years? My mother-in-law's fake tears evaporated instantly. What kind of question is that? We gave you space. You're the one who ran off. You were so unstable back then, we had to protect the family. I laughed. I couldn't help it. I didn't run off. He threw my things onto the porch in a snowstorm and changed the locks. I turned to him. You stood in the window and watched me walk away with no coat. You didn't call to see if I froze to death. You erased me by the next morning. I let it sit. And it had nothing to do with me being unstable. It had everything to do with the account at First Cascade Bank. The $58,000 my grandmother left me, in my name, for school. The color went out of my mother-in-law's face. My sister-in-law's mouth fell open. My father-in-law's knuckles went white on the edge of the table. I hired a forensic accountant 3 years ago, I said, easy, like I was reading a weather report. I wanted to finally use what Grandma left me. You want to know what he found? 4 days after you locked me out, you used a forged power of attorney to liquidate that account. Every cent. Gone. I looked at my sister-in-law. You want to know where it went? The down payment on a boutique that folded in 18 months. My future, spent on a vanity project, and you needed me gone and cut off so I'd never get the bank statements in the mail. You ghosted me for 7 years to cover a felony. Her husband stared at his father-in-law like he was seeing him for the first time. My sister-in-law shrank in her chair. We were desperate, my mother-in-law wailed into her hands. You weren't using the money anyway. I wasn't using it because I was working 3 jobs to afford a studio with no heat, I said. While you spent it. My father-in-law's fist came down hard enough to rattle the glasses. Enough ancient history. I raised you under my roof. You raised your son. I married him. And you treated me like staff from the day I walked in. I let that land. But that's not even the part you should be worried about tonight. That's when her husband decided to play peacemaker, hands up, that patronizing chuckle. Okay, let's all bring the temperature down. Tovah, you're getting emotional. This is just corporate structuring. Women in the caregiving fields, you pour so much heart into the work, it's beautiful, but real business is objective. I turned to him slowly. I'm too emotional to understand corporate structuring, I repeated. Is it the bridge loan you took at 12% to cover your monthly burn? Or the part where your investors stopped returning your calls 8 days ago, right around when your company filed Chapter 11? He went gray. My sister-in-law's head snapped toward him. Chapter 11, you told me we were pivoting. You said the new money was coming this week. He wouldn't look at her. A bead of sweat rolled into that frayed collar. Pivoting is a polite word for broke, I said. So please, tell me again how handing you 40% of my debt-free clinic is a sound strategy. That was when my father-in-law pulled out his phone and held it up like a loaded gun. You've pushed this far enough, he said. I gave you a way out. Now I make the call. He looked at me, waiting for me to fold, to beg, to slide the pen across the table. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my own phone instead. I opened the voice recorder, pressed the red button, and set it face up in the middle of the table, right next to their contract. Go ahead, I said, calm as a still lake. Call your friend. But if you're going to end my career tonight, you're going to do it where everyone can hear it. Put him on speaker. He scoffed, sure I was bluffing. He dialed. The ringing filled the room. A tired voice answered. My father-in-law boomed into the speaker like they were brothers. It's me from the club, sorry to bother you so late, but I've got a situation. I'm sitting in that rehab place on the ground floor of your building, and the owner here is my estranged daughter-in-law and she's being uncooperative. I need a favor. I need you to pull her lease, teach her a lesson. Silence on the line. Long, heavy silence. My family's triumphant little smiles began to slip. What in God's name are you talking about? The landlord finally said, and you could hear the disgust in it. You're calling my home at 9 at night to ask me to illegally evict the most profitable tenant in that whole block? Well, yes. I just need you to pull some strings. I can't pull anything, the man snapped. I don't own that building. I sold it 3 months ago. The whole plaza. Deeds, leases, all of it. I have no authority over that clinic or any tenant in it. Don't ever call me with this nonsense again. My father-in-law's voice went thin. Who did you sell it to? A private group. All cash, over asking, closed in record time. Outfit called Birchwood Holdings. Now, leave me alone. The line went dead. He stared at the black screen, the blood draining out of his face. His grand weapon, the threat he'd marched in here so certain of, was made of nothing. He'd come to take half of my life on a bluff he didn't even know was a bluff. It means nothing, he said finally, scrambling for his footing. Some private equity outfit doesn't care about one little clinic. They'll evict you to put in a chain anyway. You should still sign. His son-in-law nodded frantically. Exactly. I deal with these firms. We approach Birchwood as a united family front. My background. We can negotiate. We don't beg anyone, my father-in-law barked. I'm a respected man in this city. I'll find out who runs Birchwood by noon tomorrow and I'll have them throw you out myself. I let him finish. Then I reached down to the recorder, stopped it, and slid the phone back in my pocket. You're going to track down the owners of Birchwood Holdings tomorrow. You'd better believe it. There's no need to wait until morning, I said softly, and no need to make any calls. I walked to the credenza against the wall, opened the cabinet, and took out a slim leather folder I keep there. I came back and laid a single document on top of their stupid contract. At the top, in heavy black type, Articles of Organization. Birchwood Holdings, LLC. I tapped the line for sole managing member. Read it out loud, I said. So there's no confusion about who you've been talking to all night. His lips moved. No sound came. So I said it for him. I'm Birchwood Holdings. I own 100%. There's no board. There are no corporate sharks coming to gut this place. There's only me. While you were spending my college money on ice sculptures and your daughter's boutique, I was working 80-hour weeks. I saved every dollar. And when the old landlord let it slip at his club that he was selling, I was the first one in the room with cash. I bought the plaza 3 months ago. I own the parking lot your car is sitting in. I own the concrete under your feet. I leaned down close to his ear. You marched in here, threatening to call my landlord. I'm the landlord. You came here to evict me from my own building. My mother-in-law gasped. My sister-in-law went rigid. And then her hand, shaking, knocked her wineglass off the edge of the table. It shattered on the floor, and the red bled across the tile around her shoes, and nobody moved to clean it. But her husband, he moved. I watched the math happen behind his eyes, watched him realize my father-in-law held nothing and the actual money in this room was all mine. He stood, brushed invisible lint off that velvet jacket, turned his back on the man who'd brought him here, and gave me a wide, sick, eager smile. Tovah, listen. I told him this ambush was a terrible idea. I swear it. You and I, we're the new generation. Forget your father-in-law. We partner directly. Just us. 200,000. A short bridge loan. That's nothing to a property owner like you. And I give you 20% of the platform. You complete snake. My father-in-law choked. His son-in-law didn't even look back. He was on his knees now, all but begging the woman he called too emotional 20 minutes ago. And then my sister-in-law exploded out of her chair. Are you begging her? She shrieked, shoving him in the chest. You told me the New York money was wired. You swore we weren't going broke. Shut up, Olivia. He caught himself. Shut up. We are broke. The house is in foreclosure, and maybe if you'd stop maxing out cards on handbags every month we'd have a cushion. I'm pregnant, you loser. You told my whole family you were a millionaire. They tore into each other right there in the middle of my consultation suite, screaming. The perfect golden couple coming apart at every seam. I let it run a full minute. Then I said, enough. It cut through them like a scalpel. They turned to look at me, panting. I stepped over the wine and stopped in front of my sister-in-law. You're not a victim, I said. You walked into my clinic tonight and insulted my chairs and treated my staff like servants because you've spent 30 years believing you're better than everyone. But what makes you better, exactly? The dress on a card at 29% interest? The leased SUV 3 months behind? The house your husband stopped paying on? You're listed as VP of his company. When the fraud suit lands next week, your name is right there next to his. She started to shake her head. You built a whole life out of debt, lies, and other people's money. You never had anything of your own. She crumbled. Please, I'm your sister. I'm pregnant. You have millions. You made your choices, I said. Now you pay the bill. She turned to her parents for rescue, the way she always had. But my mother-in-law was frozen, staring at the broken glass, and my father-in-law wasn't even looking at his golden child. He was slumped forward, clutching his chest, eyes locked on the document that said I owned everything. Then he forced himself up, straightened his tie, tried to rebuild himself out of the rubble. You know what? Keep it. Keep your little Jim. I don't want any part of it. I only came to throw you a bone because I thought you were still struggling. He waved at the wreck of his daughter and son-in-law. Don't lump me in with these two. I had no idea he was a fraud. My firm is the anchor tenant in Glassmead Tower, the whole 14th floor, the most prestigious building downtown. I'm a titan in this city. I'll walk out of here and go right back to my corner office Monday, untouched. I tilted my head and let a slow smile come. Glassmead Tower, I said. Beautiful building. The view from the 14th floor is exceptional. He froze, his hand on his briefcase. How would you know about my floor? Your firm's been there 7 years, I said. But your 5-year lease expired, didn't it? And because you've been bleeding cash for 3 quarters, you couldn't lock in a renewal. You've been month to month since January. He went white. The briefcase slipped from his hand and hit the carpet. The old owners of Glassmead over-leveraged and put it up for a distress sale last month, I said. They needed a cash buyer who could close fast, so I let it hang. Birchwood didn't just buy this block. 2 weeks ago, I closed on Glassmead Tower. I own the lobby with the floor-to-ceiling glass. I own the executive elevators. I own the entire 14th floor where your firm is squatting on a month-to-month. His knees buckled and he dropped back into the chair. The fortress he'd just bragged about belonged to the woman he'd thrown into the snow. I took the last page out of the folder and slid it across the table to him. Illinois law lets a property owner adjust a month-to-month with 30 days' notice. Consider yourself served. That's a 300% rent increase effective the 1st. Sign it and pay or be out in 30 days. I watched him understand it. Without that prestigious address on his cards, his firm was already dead. His clients trusted the image, and the image was about to evaporate. You told me 7 years ago on a frozen porch that I was dead weight and I'd never survive in the real world without your money, I said quietly. So I went out into the world. I learned how it actually works. I built something real while you played pretend with other people's cash. And now you're the one who can't survive without my property to hide behind. He put his face in his hands. I straightened up. This reunion's over. I have patience. I walked to the door, then stopped, my hand on the handle. There's just one last piece of business. I knocked twice. My head aide came in carrying a leather folio. I opened it and pulled out the itemized bill. When you walked in, you assumed a lot of things. That you could take my life's work. That I was still that girl on the porch. But your biggest mistake was assuming dinner was on the house. I read it out. The room fee, the $500 Cabernet, the off-menu charcuterie, the steak, the seafood tower, gratuity for my very patient staff. Your total tonight is $4,600. My father-in-law's old defiance flared one last time. He yanked a platinum card from his wallet and slammed it down. Run it. Take your money and let us out of this dump. My aide ran it. 10 long seconds, a sharp beep. Red screen. I'm sorry, sir, he said, perfectly even. Declined. I'm sorry, sir, he said, perfectly even. Declined. Impossible. Run it again. Declined. He threw down a corporate card. Declined. A travel card. Declined. 5 cards on the table, every one of them dead. He turned to his son-in-law. Give him your card. His son-in-law laughed, ugly. Were you asleep? I'm in chapter 11. I'm not paying a dime for wine you ordered to stroke your ego. You invited us. You pay. My sister-in-law's accounts had been frozen that morning. My mother-in-law tried to write a personal check and I put my hand flat over the pad. We don't accept personal checks from individuals with a documented history of financial instability. I looked at my watch. Here's how it works. In this state, eating a meal you can't pay for is theft of services. Over $4,000 makes it a felony. You have 5 minutes. Call a friend. Call the club. I don't care. But if this isn't paid by 9:20, I'm calling the police and pressing charges against all 3 of you. For 5 minutes I watched them come apart. My father-in-law scrolled his contacts and couldn't bring himself to dial a single one because every name in that phone was a competitor who'd feast on the news that he was begging for a bailout. His son-in-law paced and cursed at a phone no investor would answer. My mother-in-law wept. And my sister-in-law, who had never in her life been told no and meant it, finally snapped. She shoved the seafood tower off the table. It exploded across the floor. Ice and shellfish and shattered porcelain. She swept the rest of the glasses off, screaming that she hated me, hated this place, grabbed at the table itself trying to flip it, but the base was bolted down. I knocked twice more on the door. My 2 evening security men came in. They've worked corporate events for years and they read the room in half a second. One pinned my sister-in-law's flailing arms gently to her sides. Her husband lunged and got himself put against the wall. My father-in-law stood and threatened to sue and got his arm folded behind his back and his cheek laid against the walnut table next to his eviction notice. I took out my phone and dialed 3 numbers. I need units at the recovery clinic on the plaza, I said, steady. 3 individuals detained. felony theft of services and destruction of property. The officers were there in 4 minutes. My father-in-law tried to take the wheel the second they walked in. Officers, thank God this is just a family misunderstanding. My daughter-in-law is very emotional. Her security assaulted us. You can go. The taller officer looked at the wreckage on the floor and said dryly that it looked like more than a misunderstanding. The son-in-law screamed that they'd attacked his pregnant wife. My mother-in-law begged, said they were good people from a good neighborhood who just wanted to go home. I didn't raise my voice. I handed the officer the itemized bill, the 5 declined card slips my aide had printed, my ID, and the state-certified articles of organization. My name is Tovah. I'm the sole owner of this clinic and of the building. These people consumed $4,600 in food and refused to pay across 5 declined cards. When I gave them 5 minutes to resolve it, she destroyed my property. My team detained them until you arrived. No one was injured. I asked that all 4 be permanently trespassed and pressed full charges against the 3 who'd been part of the destruction. The officer looked at the evidence in his hands and then he unclipped his cuffs. My father-in-law gasped as the metal closed on his wrists. You can't do this. I know the mayor. I know people. The officer read him his rights in a bored monotone and suggested he use them. The son-in-law threw his hands up and didn't fight. One more charge stacked on a federal fraud case would have finished him. My sister-in-law sobbed as the cuffs went on over a silk dress now soaked in cocktail sauce. My mother-in-law wasn't cuffed, but they walked her out with the rest. I opened the doors to the lobby myself, and the soft music and the quiet hum of my full waiting room poured in. The officers marched them out through the center of everything, past the patients, past the wall of photos, past every soft beige chair my sister-in-law had mocked. The room went silent. 100 eyes followed my handcuffed family to the front doors. My father-in-law kept his chin up and his face burning. My sister-in-law wept openly, mascara in black rivers. They were paraded like exactly what they were. Right at the door, my father-in-law dug his heels in and turned to find me one last time. You're dead to me, he screamed, his voice cracking across the silent lobby. Do you hear me? Dead to me. I stood in the middle of the life I'd built and didn't raise my voice at all. I died 7 years ago, I said. You're screaming at your landlord. Get off my property. The officer pushed him through the doors, and they swung shut on the cold and the red and blue lights, and after a moment, the music came back up, and the gossip rose around the room like a tide. I walked back through the clinic, and the adrenaline finally drained out of my hands and left them tingling. I kept waiting for the grief I'd been told was supposed to come, the sadness you're promised when you cut off your own family, the part where blood is thicker than water and you're a monster for letting go. It never came. What came instead was lightness. A weight I'd carried up 1,000 flights of stairs for 7 years, just gone. The girl on the frozen porch could finally rest. I'd looked the monsters of my whole adult life dead in the eye, and found out they were nothing but frightened people hiding behind maxed-out cards and empty threats. I pushed through the doors into the back, where Walt was waiting to try those 6 steps again, where my staff were already mopping the suite and resetting the room, where everybody respected me because I'd earned it, and not because they were afraid of me. This was the family I chose. This was the life I built out of the very things they threw at me. A few weeks later, I signed a new lease on the 14th floor of Glassmead Tower, the office where my father-in-law used to sit denying people and hoarding what wasn't his. I turned down every law firm and hedge fund that wanted it. I gave the whole floor, the corner office, the exceptional view and all, to a nonprofit that does emergency housing and job training for young people who get thrown out of their homes with nothing. 10-year lease. $1 a month. Where a man once sat building a fortress out of fear, social workers would sit pulling kids out of the snow. If your family decided you were the problem so they'd never have to look in the mirror, hear me, their inability to see your worth was never a measurement of it. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to build something beautiful with no apology and no permission. Setting a boundary is not cruelty. It's the first honest thing some of us ever do for ourselves. They tried to bury me because I didn't fit the shape they needed me to be. They never figured out they were planting a seed, and if you've ever had to leave to survive, tell me in the comments, and remember, The best apology you'll ever give the people who doubted you is the life you build without them. The thing I keep coming back to even now is that none of it happened by accident. My father-in-law didn't lose everything because the universe decided to punish him. He lost it because the same hands that forged a power of attorney and drained a dead grandmother's gift to a grandchild were never going to build anything that lasted. You can steal a head start. You can't steal the discipline it takes to keep running. He spent 7 years polishing an image while the foundation rotted underneath, and the night he walked into my clinic, all he was really doing was showing me the bill for choices he'd been making since before I married his son. And I think that's the part people miss when they watch a story like mine and call it revenge. It wasn't revenge. Revenge is loud and sloppy and it costs you something. What I did was quiet, and it cost me nothing, because I'd already done the expensive work years earlier, alone, in a studio apartment with no heat, deciding what kind of person I was going to be when no one was watching and no one was coming to help. 3 things carried me out of that snow, and I'd hand them to anyone who's ever been the family scapegoat. The first is your sense of what's right, even when being right earns you nothing. I refused to drain my savings for a sinking boutique, and that refusal got me thrown out into a blizzard. For a long time I wondered if I should have just signed. I'm glad I didn't. The day you start betraying your own line to keep someone else comfortable is the day you stop being able to look at yourself, and a person who can't look at themselves can't build anything real. The second is your mind, sharpened on purpose. I didn't beat my father-in-law by screaming. I beat him because I'd read the business section, hired a forensic accountant, learned how distressed real estate sales work, and understood a month-to-month lease better than the man who'd signed one. Knowledge isn't glamorous. It's mornings you'd rather sleep through, spent learning the thing that bores you, because someday that boring thing will be the only door out. And the third is the plain stubbornness to keep going after the people who were supposed to love you have written you off. Walt, the patient I was working with that afternoon, took 6 steps without his walker after 2 months of agony, and I cried watching him, because I know exactly what it costs to rebuild a body, or a life, one painful repetition at a time. Priya stood at that front desk ready to dial for me. Olivia threw a tantrum and lost everything because nobody ever taught her to endure a single hard thing. That was the difference between us. Not luck. Endurance. If they buried you because you didn't fit, let them. Seeds get buried you. Because you didn't fit. Let them. Seeds get buried too. Stay decent, get sharp, and don't quit. And one day the people who threw you in the cold will be standing in a building you own, learning what you became while they weren't looking.